What's going on, guys? It's your boy Nick coming at you today on the channel with an update to my Metaphys deck profile for the post December 1st, 2022 ban list. What's crazy about this is that I wanted to upload this deck profile last week, and then the ban list seemingly came out of left field. I really wasn't expecting Konami to drop an emergency list, and it directly impacted this deck, so I wasn't able to upload it last week like I wanted to. I had to wait because I wanted to order a few more things post list, and it was a bit of a delay, getting the stuff because obviously, there was Thanksgiving, a holiday, and mail wasn't in service. So it took me longer than expected to acquire the cards that I wanted post list. But now I have everything that I need, and I am proud to bring to you guys today the update to my Metaphys list, which has been in the works for quite a bit of time, honestly. My last Metaphys list was a trap-focused variant, which I called Trapphys, and that list got slaughtered by the previous ban list because cards like Halka Fibrax, Fairy Tale Snow, and Chaos Ruler got banned, and that directly impacted that deck, so much so that I felt that I couldn't recover that particular variant, despite how awesome it was. However, since then, we've got these brand new cards known as Kashtira released in the TCG, and you wouldn't believe how incredibly pushed all these cards are, and this probably makes the most competitive version of Metaphys that I've ever built. And I couldn't be happier to show you guys this updated list, post-ban list, especially now that we got Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos back at 3. That was a huge buff to Metaphys as a whole because of how the archetype works. So, without further ado, I don't want to, waste too much of your time. I want to dive right into this profile because I'm itching to show you guys what I brought to you today and what I've been working on behind the scenes. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do live duel videos, deck profiles, deck discussions, and all kinds of rogue decks and other things of that nature. I highly encourage that if you're watching this right now and you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I can almost guarantee you that I will bring you content that you will enjoy if I haven't already done so. And I'm trying to work my way up to 1,000 subscribers. I've only been doing YouTube content for a little over a year now, and I can't get there without your guys' help. So please help me out so I can continue bringing you guys really fresh and awesome and unique content. So without further ado, we are going to jump right into this updated Metaphys list, which is featuring the brand new Kashtira cards, as you can see here before you. So, you know how we do it here on the channel. We are going to start things off with the monster lineup, of course. This deck is very streamlined. It is 41 cards in the main deck. And like I said, I can't wait to show you guys the spice. So, we're starting things off with triple copies of Metaphys Ragnarok. Ragnarok is a light attribute worm tuner effect monster, and upon its normal or special summon, you can banish the top 3 cards of your deck. And if you do, this card gains 300 attack for each Metaphys card banished by this effect. Then, here's the secondary effect where, when he inflicts battle damage to the opponent, I can special summon a level 5 or higher Metaphys monster from deck, but banish it during the end phase of the next turn. So something that you'll realize as we get into this profile is that there's a lot of high-level Metaphys monsters, and a lot of the high-level ones only have effects that trigger when they're special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster specifically, which is obviously something that Ragnarok can enable when he inflicts damage. Not only that, all the Metaphys have effects when banished, which trigger on the following standby phase of the next turn after they were banished. So they're a little slow, but honestly, once you get the ball rolling, it's almost impossible to stop, and you just have a continuous flow of free advantage, which most decks can't really match. So triple copies of Rag, he's your best starter in this particular variant of the deck, and I can't understand how powerful he actually is, especially given the fact that he is a tuner, which is something that I think a lot of people tend to overlook. But moving on, we're on 2 copies of Metaphys Decoy Dragon. Decoy Dragon is a pendulum, as you can see. What the funny thing about this card is that his pendulum effect and monster effect are the exact same. And what that is that when a monster I control is targeted for an attack, I can target one of my Metaphys monsters that is banished or in my graveyard as cost. I banish the Decoy Dragon from the field, and if I do, I special summon that targeted monster in attack position. Now what's cool about this is similar to Ragnarok's secondary effect, Decoy can also trigger the secondary effects of the Metaphys, high-level Metaphys monsters, because they would be summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, so you're able to trigger their summon effects, which is really cool. And then Decoy has an effect that if this card is banished, he can, during the next standby phase after the turn he was banished, special summon himself. So he's just a recurrable resource over and over that you can get pretty much for free. Like, he comes back, you know, when he's banished on the next standby, and then if the opponent attacks anything, doesn't even have to attack Decoy. If he battles any monster I control, and I have Decoy either on my field or in my Pendulum Zone, he has the exact same effect, so he can banish himself, and then I target a banished or Metaphys that's in my banish zone or graveyard, and special summon it. So I just get free advantage, honestly, and if most players tend to not read cards, and Decoy can easily clap them cheeks, like, all the puns intended. Like, honestly, like, if people aren't careful, Decoy can end their whole career. But moving on to the high-level Metaphys, we're on 2 copies of Metaphys Daedalus. Daedalus is really cool because he's the only... Well, I shouldn't say only. There is another level 7 Metaphys, but it's a vanilla monster and no one really cares about it. But Daedalus is the only effect monster in the archetype that's level 7. And the reason why that level matters is because, well, we're running Kashtira. And we'll get into the Kashtira portion shortly, and you'll see why the Kashtira synergize so well with Metaphys. But him being a 7 is a huge plus. Like, Kashtira love level 7s, and Daedalus being a 7 is just a shoo-in instantly. But pretty much, when this card is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, I can banish all other special summon monsters on the field. It's non-target, non-destruction. That is the best form of removal in the game. Just banishing all other special summon monsters on the field is absolutely nuts on a 2600 beat stick. Not to mention, if this card gets banished, during the standby phase of the next turn, you shuffle this card back in the deck as cost, and then you banish a Metaphys card from the deck. So he helps enable plays for the following turn. So overall, very strong card, and we run this at 2 copies in this particular list. Moving on to 2 copies of Metaphys Nephthys. He's a level 8 light worm. And then if he's special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, we can banish all set spells and traps on the field. Again, non-target, non-destruction, just banishing all set spells and traps on the board is absolutely insane against your back row heavy matchups. Like, it's a total blowout, honestly. And then if this card is banished, during the standby phase of the next turn after it was banished, we can shuffle this banished card into the deck as cost, and if we do, we can add a Metaphys card from the deck to our hand. So he's pretty much an in-archetype Rhoda for the entire theme, being able to search you any Metaphys card from deck to hand, which is really, really nice. And then for the last main deck Metaphys monster, we are playing 1 copy of the Metaphys Tyrant Dragon. Tyrant Dragon, in my opinion, is like the most lackluster of the high-level Metaphys currently. But that doesn't mean that he's terrible. He does have his uses. However, the reason why we're just on 1 copy of him is because I don't want to banish him and then, like, whiff on his effect. And I'll explain what I mean by that shortly. So if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, he's unaffected by trap effects, and if it attacks a monster, it can make a second attack in a row. Now, all that's great. That's really cool, fine, and dandy. Like, the fact that it can attack twice and is unaffected by traps is huge, especially on a 2900 beater. That's great. Here's why we only play 1 copy of it. If this card gets banished, during the standby phase of the next turn, you can shuffle this card back into your deck as cost to special summon a Metaphys from hand. Now that seems great until you realize that you need to have a Metaphys in hand to special summon in order for you to be able to shuffle this card back in the first place. So this card does require a bit of setup, especially when you consider that most Metaphys cards, or at least the high level ones, you don't really want to draw them because they're pretty much bricks in your hand. They don't really serve too much of a function outside of Daedalus, which has some niche synergy with Kashtira. And we'll get into that shortly again. But they're mostly garnets. Like, you don't want to see them in hand, you just want them banished. So there's very few and far between where you'll have one in hand that you want to special. And the thing is that if Tyrant Dragon gets banished and you don't have a Metaphys to special on the following standby, Tyrant Dragon cannot shuffle himself back into the deck because you can't pay a cost for an effect that can't be fulfilled. So he'll just stay stuck in the banish zone. So, like, it gets pretty situational. So as a one-of, I'm able to control a lot better of when I'm banishing this card when I need to, versus me just playing 3 copies of it and then banishing it randomly and then not having the setup I need and it, like, whiffing pretty much. So just 1 copy on the Tyrant Dragon is all we need for now. But now, jumping into the Kashtira lineup. And oh boy, are these cards a complete doozy. Triple copies of Kashtira Fenrir. Sorry for all you budget players out there. I know that if you're looking at this deck and you're really excited about Metaphys, I'm going to tell you right now, don't build this. Kashtira is way too expensive. And to be honest, I don't think it's going to drop in price either. I mean, if you have the deep pockets and you want to buy into this, I highly encourage you do it now, because when Kashtira gets their second wave of support in Photon Hypernova, all these cards are only going to increase further in price from what they already are. But Fenrir, obviously, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him. A lot of decks are choosing to either mainboard this or sideboard this as like the, Pankratops 2.0 because it's just so generic. Pretty much if we control no monsters, we special him from our hand. Then during our main phase, we can search for a Kashtira monster from deck to hand. Yes, he can search a copy of himself, which is absolutely redundant. Like, it's so silly that he can do that. But he can also search for anything else in the theme, so that makes him very valuable, especially when they get the second wave of support. But here's what makes Fenrir so threatening. When Fenrir declares an attack, or if your opponent's monster activates an effect, you can. This is a trigger effect, so a lot of people get confused, I think. The Kashtira monsters are not quick effects. They don't chain to the activations of your opponent's monster effects. They start a new chain once that opponent's monster effect has resolved, if that makes any kind of sense. So they all have pretty much the same trigger condition. They either need to battle, or attack specifically, excuse me. They need to be attacking, or the opponent needs to activate a monster effect. If either of those two things occur, then you can activate the following effect. In the case of Fenrir, you can target any face-up card on the field and banish it face down. So banishing things is already like a surefire way to get rid of most threats, but banishing it face down is almost a literal guarantee that your opponent cannot get that card back whatsoever. So that's like the most permanent form of removal the game has to offer, I believe. And Fenrir is just the absolute nuts. That's on a level 7 free extender. So very strong card in this particular list. Then we're moving on to the next really crazy card, Kashtira Unicorn. Now I think a lot of people currently are undervaluing this card because they think that Fenrir is the better card. And right now, if you're playing like a non-Kashtira focused deck, then yes, Fenrir is the better card. However, in pure Kashtira, Unicorn, or like any deck playing like a larger Kashtira package, Unicorn is the better than Fenrir in my opinion because Unicorn is literally a one-card combo. Unicorn, again, if you control no monsters, can special summon himself from hand for free, no cost. Keep in mind, those effects to special themselves from hand are not once per turn. So like if you special one, let's say your opponent like Torrential Tributes, and you have another one in hand, you just special summon it, even if it's the same copy. Like, it's absolutely cracked. But anyway, so they special summon themselves. Then, during the main phase, Unicorn lets you search a Kashtira spell from deck to hand. Now, currently, there is only one spell card that we can search, and that's Kashtira Birth. And we'll get into what that card does shortly, but that card is also equally nuts. But then, if Unicorn declares an attack, or if your opponent's monster activates an effect, you can look at your opponent's extra deck and banish one card from it face down. I can't, begin to explain how completely broken that effect is. Like, not only do you get matchup knowledge of what your opponent's playing, you literally get to snipe out, threats before they even become a problem. Like, if you're playing against Sprite, for example, and you're just sick and tired of them summoning Totally Awesome 50 million times per game, just banish their Toad, face down. Now they don't have the Toad to fall back on. Like, it's just so stupid, honestly. Like, Kashtira is so broken, I can't even begin to, it's so, unfair. For the, if you're facing against this deck, it's you're not having a good time, honestly. It's absolutely nuts. Then we're running 2 copies of Ogre. Ogre, in my opinion, is the least most impactful one. Excuse me. Gotta take a little drink from my Yu-Gi-Oh cup. But anyway, Ogre, in my opinion, is the least impactful. And the reason being is, again, he can special summon himself just like Unicorn and Fenrir can. And then during your main phase, you can search for a Kashtira Trap from deck to hand. Now, currently, there is only one Kashtira Trap we can search. And again, we'll get into what that card is shortly. But Ogre's on-field effects, aside from, getting the special in the search, are kind of lackluster in my opinion. Basically, if Ogre declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can look at up to the top 5 cards of their deck, and then banish one card from it face down, place the remaining cards on top of their deck in any order. That's a good effect. You get, again, matchup knowledge, so now you know what they're playing. Also, Ogre is the biggest Kashtira between Fenrir and Unicorn. He's sitting at 2,800, whereas Unicorn's at 25 and Fenrir's at 24. But, I just don't feel like his effect is as impactful as something like Fenrir, which is, guaranteed removal of something on field, or Unicorn being able to preemptively snipe out extra deck threats. Being able to banish a card from their extra deck, looking at the top 5 and banishing one is cool, but keep in mind, most, relevant strategies play, playsets of most things, so even if you snipe, their starter or something, they probably have 2 more copies of it in deck anyway. So I'm not saying that Ogre's bad. I'm just saying that between, Unicorn and Fenrir, Ogre's definitely bottom you know, bottom shelf as far as that's concerned, but he is still pretty cool, and we play him as a 2 of for that reason. But now, continuing on with our monster lineup, triple copies of Necroface. This card is just an automatic FTK almost. Like, if you resolve Necroface, your opponent's having a bad time. I mean, you're having the time of your life, but they're having a bad time. This card is not once per turn. I just want to point that out before we read it. But pretty much, if it's normal summoned, you can shuffle all banished cards back into the deck. That's a mandatory effect. It's not optional. You might think that that's counterproductive, but honestly, if it's like a grind game, sometimes normal summoning a Necroface mid to late game can actually swing the tide in your favor, because he gains 100 attack for each card shuffled back into the main deck by that effect. So Necroface can get pretty big, but also too, like, being able to recur some of your resources, because there's going to be a point, if the duel goes long enough, where you might be close to decking yourself out because of how much you're banishing, and sometimes you just need a reset button, and Necroface is here to do that. However, if Necroface gets banished, each player banishes the top 5 cards of their deck, or the rest of their deck if less than 5. So think of Necroface as like the Yugioh, Ishizu card, or the Kelbeck Ishizu card, except instead of sending both players' decks to grave, they're banishing. Like, I'm getting all the pluses, meanwhile the opponent's like getting their deck banished, which is just nuts. And again, you can easily go Necroface, and then if you hit a Necroface off the banish 5, that one triggers to banish 5 more, and then if you hit that one, you banish 5 more. You could easily banish a total of like 15 cards off of their deck, which is absolutely silly. So 3 copies of Necroface. Then trying to round out the rest of the monsters, 2 copies of Astral Kribo. Again, we're playing Kashtira as an engine in this deck, so Astral Kribo is absolutely nuts, just being a free level 7 extender by revealing a number rank exceeds from the extra deck. We special the Astral from hand, and then any number exceeds we make using Astral's material cannot be destroyed by battle or the opponent's card effects, which just makes them all that much more annoying. Then, to round out the monster lineup, we're on 1 copy each of the Nemesis package. I like these cards a lot because we banish so many things that we need a way to sometimes recur some of our banished resources, while also giving us the ability to special summon cards from our hand for free. Now, the reason why we're running 1-ofs of each of these instead of like duplicates is the fact that each of these are hard ones per turns. So I don't want a situation where if I draw into them, like, let's say if I draw into 2 copies of flags, I can only use 1 flag. Like, then the other one is just kind of dead in my hand. So running 1-ofs of each just guarantees that whichever one we draw, it's always going to be live, and I never have to sit there and wait another turn. So that's all pretty cool. They all, like I said, they can target a banished monster, shuffle it into the deck, and then special summon themselves from hand, which is cool. Keystone, if he gets banished during the end phase of that turn, he adds himself back to hand. Nemesis, a flag while on field, he can add a Nemesis monster from deck to hand. Umbrella can special summon a Nemesis from the graveyard, and then Corridor can add a banished Nemesis monster to our hand. So they're all different types and attributes. We are not playing the big Arch Nemesis Eschatos, I think, because I know Protoss is banned. Eschatos is still legal, but we are choosing not to run that because, honestly, we don't really need to. The card doesn't have that much synergy with the deck. I mean, yes, it does banish things to summon itself, but honestly, we have plenty of other ways to banish our cards, so we don't really need a brick, basically, in the deck to facilitate that. So, and then to round out the last monster in the main, 1 copy of Giant Rex. This card is pretty funny. Basically, if it gets banished, it special summons itself immediately to your side of the field. That effect is once per turn, but honestly, like, being able to banish this at any point and specialing it on a free 2,000 attack body is nice, helping you make link plays or synchro plays. It's just a free body. Like, why wouldn't you run it? So just as a 1-of, I think it's perfectly fine. But that's it for the monsters, guys. Now we're going to move into the spell cards. Newly off the ban list, triple copies of Dimensional Fissure. I honestly never thought we'd get this card back off the list. I'm going to tell you guys right now, a bit of a spoiler, we are not running Macrocosmos in this deck. We are just choosing to run triple copies of DeFi. Reason being is because I personally think that DeFi is the better card between the two. Simply put, because it's a spell and not a trap. So if we lose the die roll and go second, and the opponent makes a board, activating Dimensional Fissure going second just helps solidify us being able to break their board and ensure that they can't recover. Like, whereas if we, have Macro going second, Macro doesn't do anything. Like, it's a trap, we have to set it, and then, we have to try and play through their board. Meanwhile, if you break anything, break their field, all their cards are going into the graveyard anyway, and, against Tier Element, that's what they want. So, against a tier matchup, if you activate DeFi going second, it just makes breaking their board so much easier because they don't have all that recurability that they normally get. So I think Dimensional Fissure is honestly overall the better card anyway. So we're choosing not to run macro. Plus, I don't want to brick on too many cards that do the same thing and that don't give me any value when they're banished. Like, I don't want to start like having too many quote unquote bricks. Excuse me. Bricks where like I normal summon a rag and I start whiffing on it because I'm banishing like, play sets of macro and stuff. I think the playset of DeFi is more than enough, and that's all we really need for this particular list. So glad that it's back to 3. But moving on, triple copies of Sacred Sword of 7 stars because we are running a heavy Kashtira package, and being able to banish a level 7 from hand or field to draw 2 cards is just free real estate, especially when you consider that you can banish a Kashtira that you special summoned, and then draw 2 cards and then special another Kashtira because you'd control no monsters at that point. Moving on though, 2 copies of Kashtira Birth. This is the spell card that Kashtira Unicorn searches, and this card is nuts. Basically, you can normal summon level 7 monsters without tributing. So like, you can normal summon Daedalus, for example, without tributing monsters to summon it, which is crazy. However, this is kind of why I like running Kashtira with Metaphys, is because this spell, once per turn, can special summon one of your Kashtira monsters that is banished or in your graveyard. So think about it, if you normal summon Ragnarok and banish a bunch of Kashtira monsters, as long as you have access to Birth, you can still recover all those banished monsters for free off of this spell. Then, while you control Kashtira monster, if your opponent activates a spell card, you can target 3 cards in their graveyard, banish them face down. So very, very strong. Lots of cool synergy there. Can't wait to show you guys the, combo tutorial test hand video. And then to round out the spells is 1 copy of Goldsark. Unfortunately, it is still limited, but Goldsark is just absolutely nuts in this deck. Being able to banish any singular card you want, and then getting it back to your hand 2 turns later is just free chicken tendies, as M. Cole 40 would say. And then rounding out the trap lineup is very small. 2 copies of Metaphys Ascension. We decided to cut this card down to 2 of, again, to keep the deck count small. But because we banish things so much and so frequently, Metaphys Ascension is a hard once per turn on all of its effects. So I don't want a situation where like I banish multiple copies or duplicates, and then I can only get to resolve 1 of them. Like, in testing, I was, playing 3 of it, and I kept banishing multiples, like, a lot of the time, and it would kind of frustrate me, because I would only get the value off of 1, and then the other one was just kind of a waste, because, they're hard ones per turn. So running it at 2 kind of mitigates that issue, but overall, the card is absolutely crazy. If it's banished, it becomes a rota for a Metaphys card, and then when you activate it on field, you discard a Metaphys card to draw a card, and then you banish a Metaphys from deck. The only sad part is that you can only use 1 of its effects per turn. So, like, you can either use the on-field or use the banished effect, but you can't use both in the same turn. So that's kind of shitty, but it is what it is. And then 1 copy of Kashtira Preparations. This is pretty much the only trap that the Kashtira archetype has the ability to search, and we search it through the Kashtira Ogre. As I mentioned briefly, this card is a continuous trap, and it's also very strong. During either player's turn, we can special summon a Kashtira monster that is banished or in our hand. So again, all the more reason to like activate cards like Necroface, Ragnarok, banish as much cards as we can, and then we can get all of our value back through the Kashtira spells and traps. Then if the opponent activates a trap card or trap effect and we already control a Kashtira monster, we can look at their hand and banish a card from it face down. So again, just a nutty card overall. Just a 1 of is more than enough. We don't need to like brick ourselves on playing multiples of this, especially since it's searchable. So again, in testing, I found that was the perfect ratio. And then for the last card in the main deck, again, the main deck sits at 41 cards. Very, very clean and concise main deck. We're running the 1 copy of Metaphys Dimension. This card is nuts, being able to special summon a banished Metaphys monster whenever your opponent special summons a monster. And then if any Metaphys card in your possession gets banished while this card's face up, you can target any card on the field and banish it. So very strong removal, and usually very unexpected when you pull it off against your opponent. They tend to walk right into it. So now, moving on to the extra deck. And the extra deck is just chock full of stuff that can't be destroyed, can't be targeted, or is just simply unaffected. So I think you guys are going to like it a lot. So diving headfirst into it, 1 copy of Trishula, Dragon of Icy Imprisonment. This is a spicy tech that I'm choosing to play in the extra deck. Reason being, we don't care about its effects whatsoever. The only reason why we play this card is because we can contact fuse into it by banishing 3 monsters with different names from our field. That is really, really strong. Like, let's say we have a situation where we have like a Metaphys on board and maybe like a Necroface and a, Giant Rex. We can banish all 3 of them to special contact fuse this from the extra deck, and then Necroface triggers to banish 5 off each of our decks, Giant Rex triggers and summons itself, Like, we just get so much free value off of this, and it's very, very strong. So we're choosing to play that as a one of. Then moving on to our synchros. One copy of Metaphys Horus. Very, very strong card that we can make. It offers you a permanent negation of any card on field, and it has the potential to steal an opponent's monster without even targeting it, which is nuts. It forces the opponent to give us control of their card permanently. So 2 very strong effects on that. Then we are on the 1 copy of Angel of Zera. Very strong card. I've been testing this, especially now that Dimensional Fissure's at 3. This card puts in a hell of a lot of work. It pretty much, whenever it's banished, during the next standby phase, it just special summons itself. It's a generic level 8 synchro, and it gains 100 attack for each of your opponent's banished cards. So this card gets very big, very fast. Then, for our level 11 synchros, because Ragnarok is a level 4 tuner, and we do play a lot of level 7s in the deck, so 7 and 4 make 11. We play a copy of Star Eater. Shout out to the first edition ulti. This card looks absolutely incredible. But pretty much just a generic level 11 synchro, 3200 body. Cards and effects can't be activated when it's synchro summoned, so similar to like the Egyptian gods, like you can't like respond to this card summon. And then when this card battles, cards in it's unaffected by other cards' effects until the end of the damage step. So like, you know, your opponent can't clear this with like Mirror Force or anything that would activate in damage step. It's just completely unaffected. So very strong generic level 11 synchro. And then an even stronger generic level 11 synchro is 1 copy of Psychic Gun Punisher. This card is absolutely nuts, and I can't understate how crazy this card is, being able to make it using, again, Rag and any Kashtira. And then, of course, we're on the 1 copy of Geomathemic Final Sigma as a generic level 12 synchro. Again, unaffected while it's in the extra monster zone. So very strong synchro there. Moving on to our Xyz package. 1 copy of Kashtira Shangri Era. This card is going to be the bane of everybody's existence come post-Photon Hypernova. Just an absolute house of a card. 1 copy of number 89, Diablosis the Mind Hacker. Again, everyone's bane of the existence come next format. 1 copy of number 11, Big Eye. And then 1 copy of Dark Armed, the Dragon of Annihilation. So these are the only rank 7s we're choosing to play in the extra deck. And I think this covers all of our bases. If we're going first, we make either of these 2. If we're going second, we make either of these 2. We steal something, or we break their board and banish cards from our grave in the process. Either way, we're winning. All of those are very, very strong, obviously. And then moving on to our links. 1 copy of Donner Dagger for Hire. This is a generic link too, requiring 2 monsters with different types. The reason why we play this is because it can target itself and an opponent's monster and blow them both up. So that's like free removal, and not only that, it clears itself. So if we have a Kashtira in hand, we can special summon that Kashtira after this card resolves. So I felt like it was free real estate there. 1 copy of IP Masquerena, again, generic link 2, that's very strong. 1 copy of the BLS Soldier of Chaos. We play a lot of level 7 or higher in this deck. So making this is a breeze, and especially when we use a level 7 or higher, it can't be targeted or be destroyed by the opponent's card effects. And then for the last 2 cards in the extra deck, 1 Topologic Trisbana and 1 Topologic Zeraboros. Again, using IP to go into these is game winning. Trisbana and Zeraboros, I think, are very underappreciated, and they're super strong. So that rounds out the extra deck. Moving into the side briefly before we end the video. The side is again up to everyone's preference, but this is what I'm choosing to run. Triple copies of Heavenly Zephyr Miradora, a generic hand trap that doesn't need the graveyard, because you have to remember that we do main deck triple DeFi, so a lot of hand traps actually don't work because most of them need to go to grave as cost, and we can't do that a lot of the time. So Miradora is nice. It's also a level 7, so again, it just synergizes well with the Kashtira cards. Then we're on 2 copies of Danger Dogman and 1 Pank. Again, just as generic level 7s that are kind of extenders. They all special themselves for free. So free real estate as far as that's concerned. And then moving into the spells, triple copies of Dark Hole, because being able to activate a DeFi and then Dark Holing the board and letting everything get banished is completely hilarious. Then for our back row heavy matchups, 3 Twin Twisters, again, because we don't want to deal with anything that the opponent's throwing our way. And to round out the side deck is triple copies of Soul Absorption, because going into time sucks, and we need an easy and cheap way to gain a lot of life. So that's going to round out the update to my Metaphys Kashtira deck list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the profile. Stay tuned, because I will be doing a combo tutorial and test hand video for this specific deck. And also stay tuned, because I will be doing a live duel videos showcasing this deck and some of the other deck profiles that I brought to the channel recently. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for your time. Sorry that this video is a bit long. I've been trying to work on getting my videos to be a bit shorter, but I'm still working on that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the content that I brought to you today. And with that being said, like and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you all so much for your time. And hopefully you've enjoyed the profile.